Fast Lawyer VR reviews. For sexy VR reviews, hit the subscribe button. Today we're reviewing BONELAB VR, a game released on the Steam store September 29th, 2022 by developer Stress Level 0. It officially supports the Valve Index and the Oculus Rift. It normally retails for $40. I bought this game. I tested this game out on the MetaQuest 2 using link cable, and it took me approximately 9 hours to complete the game, exploring as much as possible and not trying to skip any content at all. I have heard that some people beat this game in 4 hours. However, that sounds like they skipped a lot of content or they saw some sort of walkthrough. However, I think for most people, they will finish the game anywhere from 6 to 10 hours. Again, just depending on how much of the side content you want to do and also how much of the world you want to explore. I usually try to fully explore a game like this. BONELAB VR is an experimental physics game. It is running on the Unity engine on my RTX 3080 on high graphical settings. I was getting a steady 90 frames per second. I did experience some bugs during my playthrough, none of them game breaking. The biggest issue I faced was when a level just didn't load. I did have to quit the game and restart. Luckily, when I restarted, the level did load properly. Also, it is possible to lose weapons in your hand when you die, and their placement can be quite random after you die. Sometimes they were right in front of you when you respawn, so you can quickly pick them up. Sometimes those weapons were where you last died, and there were then some times where I just couldn't find them at all. You do have full locomotion, smoother snap turning. You can choose the angle of the snap turn or the speed of the turn. You can play standing or seated, and the game will automatically readjust your height. One very odd setting in this game is that you can adjust your real life height and it'll change the perspective of the world. So you can make yourself very small and it'll make a miniaturized world version for you. BONELAB is very similar to Boneworks. You have this sandbox play area where you can do all these side activities, but there's also an overarching narrative, and of course you have the experimental physics here that if you played Boneworks you should be very familiar with it. So for example, the harder you swing a melee weapon, the bigger impact it'll have on an object, and similarly, the bigger the object you swing, the heavier the mass, the harder the impact as well. Very simply, force equals mass times acceleration. And you also have inertia, so basically just Newtonian physics. And you also have some of the same issues with Boneworks. For example, if you have a large weapon and you swing it around, it does feel very wobbly, or like you're trying to swing a giant noodle, except it does have some weight to it. Another familiar issue is that if you're near an object, there's a lot of funky physics that happen. For example, you could be near a wall and you'll crash into it and it'll push you off the edge, or your weapon will crash against a container and it'll cause a lot of funky physics to happen. There's also a lot of platforming in this game, so there's a lot of climbing, a lot of puzzles where you have to pick an object and use it in some way to help activate some kind of device or reach a certain area. And there's also a lot of time jumping in this game. The puzzles in this game are really not difficult. Really, the most difficult part of this game is just trying to figure out what objective you need to do next. It can be very unclear on what you need to do to proceed to the next level. The one major change from Boneworks is this new body avatar system. Basically, you have different bodies and they affect how you interact with the world. If you're very tall, you can reach certain areas much easier. However, if you're very small, you can run much faster. If you're very big, you can pick up heavy objects easily, but obviously if you're small, you cannot pick them up. And this body avatar system is interesting, but it also causes a lot of new problems that were not present in Boneworks. For example, the weapons change in size, or at least the perspective perspective of their size changes with your body type. If you're very tall, these weapons seem very small, but if you're very small, these weapons appear to be very big. This makes weapon handling more difficult than it needs to be. I tried reloading the handguns as the tall body type, and it was a major pain having your motion controllers crash into each other and not being able to put the magazine into the handgun. It took multiple attempts, and it was just overall very frustrating. You do have magnet hands, but they are very inconsistent. I usually would grab the wrong thing, and while trying to do platforming sections, it was very common for me to instead pick up a magazine from my chest instead of being able to hold on to the platform, causing a lot of frustration. There's also a lot of action in this game, but it's very unbalanced. If you have the right weapon, combat can seem very simple and too basic. For example, if you have a shotgun, you can basically one-shot almost all the enemies and it'll be very easy to aim. They have very good range and they're just very powerful overall. However, if you don't have a firearm and enemies are shooting at you from a distance, it can seem quite unfair when you only have a melee weapon and they're tagging you from a distance and you're having to do some platforming. The enemy AI here is just not very good, but they can definitely be at an advantageous situation over you. So either combat is too easy or it's too unfairly difficult. Keep in mind, I lost many weapons along the way while playing this game. I did not like the inventory system or the holstering system for this game. So one thing that you do need to know is that you need to find the weapon unlock in order for you to be able to holster the weapon. If you haven't unlocked the weapon, then the only thing you can do is you can have it in your hand, but you cannot holster it at all, even if you have no other weapons holstered. And really, the inventory system is basically only for weapons. If you ever need a key, the locked door will usually be very close by, so you just carry the key to that location. Honestly, the inventory system here is just very ugly. It could have been done much better. The visuals in this game are all over the place. There's definitely several levels that look very good in this game, but there's also several levels that are either very blurry or too foggy, and this was on high graphical settings, so I wasn't sure why this game looked blurry or too foggy in certain areas. The musical soundtrack here is also all over the place. There were certain soundtracks that were okay, but some of them were just straight out bad, and the sound mix at times was just also all over the place. It was just simply too loud in certain areas. Overall, I do recommend BONELAB, even though I know I've made lots of criticisms in this review, but if you like the original Boneworks, I think you will like BONELAB. It does have a good physics system that is fun at times, but it can also be very frustrating. Here, the problem is that while certain levels were fun to experience, my favorite, of course, was the mine roller coaster ride. It's one of the best roller coasters in VR, if not the best, but there were also some levels that I really did not like at all. Moonbase was absolutely terrible, bad level design, and let me give you a tip right here. Spawn a automatic weapon, get lots of ammo, and then just do normal platforming to get to the farthest base where you're facing from when you start the game, and then shoot the automatic weapon to be able to reach the platforming that you wouldn't normally reach even with the low gravity. Thank me later. This level design was terrible because you move along at a snail's pace without the automatic weapon. You don't know where you need to go, and once you figure out where you need to go, you go, what, that was it? It's just bad overall. So basically, BONELAB is 2 steps forward, 1 giant step back from Boneworks. So basically you end up where you started. And if I have to rate this game, I would give it a 7 out of 10. I'm Fast Lawyer. If you enjoyed my review, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And as always, have a wonderful day. Goodbye.